Yes, despite thinking otherwise for around about 37 milliseconds, Survivor Series 2020 is once again going to be Raw versus SmackDown, and that's kind of rubbish for two reasons. One, we only just had the draft, so there's no such thing as brand supremacy, and two, NXT don't seem to be involved. And what a relegation and what a demotion it is for those guys. And we'll still get some awesome matches out of it, as was shown tonight on Monday Night Raw. But I do think sometimes WWE just does things, because that's what we've always done. Moving on from that though, quickly, retro ups and downs this week. You have decided you would like the poll to be Halloween Havoc 1998. It's going to be removed off there if you don't vote for it eventually. WrestleMania 18, that will be a little bit of a doozy. The first ever draft, which was like Raw back in June, March 2002, or something like that. And Bad Blood 1997, I suppose, because it's Halloween and Kane's going to debut. You'll be like, oh, it's Kane, he's so terrifying. One of the best arrivals ever. But my name is Simon Miller, you are watching WhatCulture Wrestling, and let's get down to what's important right now, and that's upping those downs for the latest episode of Raw. McIntyre was out to start Raw because of course he was, that's what we do, and he was just so sad that he was no longer the WWE champion, but don't worry because he's going to be so happy by the time that he wins it back. And he also wanted to make it clear that some people are going, well, I don't think Drew McIntyre looks that devastated, but if you knew what was going on in his head, you would be shocked at the contents. So I was like, what are you thinking, Drew? Like you're stabbing Randy Orton like, bah, bah. Well, you know, you were probably doing that before Hell in a Cell 2020. Don't worry about it. The Miz and John Morrison then interrupted because, of course, The Miz is the new Mr. Money in the Bank. And I suppose he just wanted to tease Drew like, oh, it could have been you and me, but now it can't be because, like a buffoon, you lost your championship. And while they're really impressed by everybody that McIntyre is beaten, Miz and Morrison clearly think they're better and they just think the Scottish psychopath is a joke. Miz also acted like history was going to repeat itself because of course he was Mr. Money in the Bank back in 2010 and he won the title from Randy Orton the night after Survivor Series. And where did that go down? In the Amway Center, which is where the Thunderdome is. This is kind of like a cool puzzle. This kind of did go on forever though until McIntyre decided he had heard enough and he just beat them up, and later on he's gonna have a match with The Miz. Now I'm glad that we are keeping a light lit under Drew McIntyre's ass. But yeah, you could have cut this by half and you still would have got the same message across. Therefore, it's got to get it down. We then learned that the male Raw superstars, and that word is very important, we'll get into it later, we're going to have a bunch of qualifying matches with the winners going on to represent Raw at Survivor Series. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Take AJ Styles, who's in this. He only moved from Friday to Mondays like yesterday. Why would he give two hoots about brand supremacy? I already mentioned that once in the intro. Unless, of course, WWE is going to come up with some kind of prize. If it turns out the Team Raw, you know, if they're victorious, win a lifetime supply of Haribo, then I can get behind this. But otherwise, you're just blowing hot smoke into thin air. On the subject of AJ Styles, here he was with his massive friend up. Styles thought that all of it was stupid, but for different reasons. He just feels like he should be captain of Team Raw because he's AJ Styles and he's the best. And given that he was about to fight Jeff Hardy, he was like, Hardy, you better not cheat again. And I enjoyed that very much. I like it when characters in my wrestling sphere remember about the past. And we then had that match, and yeah, it was all right because obviously these two are good professional wrestlers. Although what WWE is doing with AJ Styles, his massive friend, is gonna get old really quickly. Because much like Matt Riddle last week, every time Jeff Hardy was creeping on the outside, he kept looking at this big guy like, oh man, I'm really scared about him. But Jeff Hardy has fought The Undertaker, a guy that is dead. Jeff Hardy has fought Kane, a guy that murdered people, and Jeff Hardy has fought The Big Show, a dude that's not only massive, but also will be your friend, and then he'll be your enemy, and then he'll be your friend again, and then he'll be your enemy. I mean, that's emotional distress. So why would you be freaked out because a big dude looked at you? Anyway, he was freaked out because a big dude looked at him, then allowed AJ Styles to hit the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, 3, he's in Team Raw. And then, of course, Elias came out and smacked Jeff Hardy over the head with a guitar. Well, there's more in his back. I don't really want to see that match again. Please and thank you. We then had an interview with R-Truth, who said he is going to go and scout Drew Gulak, Tozawa and the Lucha House Party, which again was absolutely baffling because he's had matches with those guys about 67,390 times. Why would he need to scout them? Sarah Schreiber was then like, oh, that's really dangerous. To which R-Truth replied, yeah, but I eat danger. So even though all of this is kind of baloney, R-Truth is just WWE's secret weapon. That couldn't save what was next though. Down. Because it was the Lucha House Party taking on the tag team of Tozawa and Drew Gulak, and why they're friends now, I don't know. And within about a minute, R-Truth came out to do this scouting, so of course everybody in the ring decided they didn't care about the tag match, and they tried to win the 24/7 championship. They weren't able to do that. At one point, Lince Dorado dived at R-Truth, but hit Drew Gulak instead, and basically won the tag team bout by accident. This was kind of rubbish. And I was really pleased though, because I predicted a storyline. I mean, it wasn't hard to predict it. Anyone could have seen it, even one-eyed Rey Mysterio, but still, I'll take what I can get. Up. And what am I talking about? Well, it was the Firefly Funhouse, and here, Bray Wyatt was essentially the Mad Hatter, as the very nice Alexa Bliss was serving them all some tea. And these two actually served me some tea, so hang on. Oh, yep, there it is. Let's have a drink and see what happens. Flubbing hell. All right, so fine, let's never ever do that again as long as we live. Ramblin' Rabbit also drank some of this tea, and then he died, because as it turned out, the secret ingredient was arsenic. This thing then got really dark, because he had like a bunch of crap coming out of his mouth as he did pass away. Then Alexa Bliss was looking in the camera going, let me in. Her eyes were all red. But it was kind of spookily wookily. I did like it though, and then she came out of her trance and was all like, oh, woohoo, later I'm gonna have Randy Orton and A Moment of Bliss. And that's when Bray Wyatt went crazy, and you had all this scary scream music, and behind him, you had a picture of when the Viper burned down his shack or his hut or his shed, whatever it was, but he wasn't very happy. So clearly, we are going in the direction of Randy Orton versus The Fiend / Bray Wyatt, and that's what I said. Look, again, I don't have much in my life, let me have it. I'm entirely sure that putting Wyatt back in the world title picture is a good idea, because so far it's been like a hit and a miss every single time, but that's what we're doing, so we may as well get on board. Keith Lee was then pissed off. And Keith, if I was you, I would be pissed off as well. He didn't appreciate the fact that Braun Strowman had cheated last week, and he'll deal with him soon. But first, he has to deal with Elias later on. Yeah, right, we'll talk about it. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler were then also backstage talking to Adam Pearce, and they both gave him a list and said, look, don't worry about doing any managing, don't worry about doing any matches, just get the people on these lists and put them in the team. For starters, Adam Pearce went, oh yeah, I'll think about it. So what crap at his job, isn't he? And then it turned out that Shayna hadn't put Nia on her list, and Nia wouldn't tell Shayna if she had put him on her. You know the deal, they're like friends, but they're enemies, and they hate each other, and they don't follow each other on Instagram. I mean, it's kind of all right, but it's going nowhere. And then honestly, couldn't believe what I was seeing, as if I'd been replaced by Rey Mysterio. And that's two jokes for one ups and downs we're not going to do anymore. But it was Keith Lee versus Elias, and Keith Lee's new gimmick is that he can never win properly, and I cannot fathom it. Down. It was of course another qualifying match for the Survivor Series, and yeah, do you know how Keith got his victory? Because when Elias was in control, Jeff Hardy's music started to play, and he couldn't believe this, even though it's happened within WWE like 7 million times up to this point. And because he was so shocked and surprised and distracted, Keith Lee hit the Spirit Bomb and beat Elias. So this man mountain couldn't even squeeze past somebody write down on a piece of paper and just send it to me. Simon Miller, bald asshole lane, it will get here, don't worry, the postman knows what he's doing. I need all the answers. Finding the postcard idea, you can write it in the comments too. So Keith is now officially Keith, I never win a match properly Lee. And given that his parents gave him that name, what kind of chance did he stand? And then Jeff Hardy was out here, he hit Elias with a guitar, which is now 3 guitar shots within 24 hours. Don't make me start a new tally. The worst part is that Keith felt like an afterthought during all of this, and Keith Lee should never be an afterthought. In fact, Keith Lee should be used so much that when he's not on screen, all the other characters should be looking at each other going, oh, where is Keith Lee? I cannot comprehend this. You have all the talent in the world, and you are squandering it, World Wrestling Entertainment. Dumb it. So her business then stopped a guy using the toilet. I don't know. Apparently it was their toilet, and I presume if he had just whipped off his pants and pissed on the floor, they would have been happy with that rather than him going into the bathroom. And look, it does happen. It doesn't happen to me, but it didn't happen that one. We don't need to talk about it. Orton was then asked if he was scared about The Fiend, and he made it very clear that he doesn't care about Bray Wyatt, he doesn't care about Drew McIntyre, and he also doesn't care about Roman Reigns. So we're clearly going to do those 3 programs at some point, especially because Survivor Series is brand versus brand. He then had a really good line where he went, what really needs to go down is that those people need to be scared about me. Randy Orton is just really good. It was also confirmed that as long as they keep their titles, we'll also be getting US Champion Bobby Lashley and taking on IC Champion Sami Zayn. And we may as well start funeral proceedings for Sami Zayn now. Just think of the whooping he gonna get. The Hurt Business then defeated Retribution. That's it, they're done, down. I don't even know what happened here. I mean, for starters, it was an elimination match, which seems like a bonkers thing to do because Survivor Series is when you do elimination matches, but we're doing it here. And the first fall, again, I need more postcards. What was the first fall? Because for some reason, Mia Yim was like on the apron in the ring, and she was just freaking out like something was attacking her or as if she'd been possessed by the Fiend. And MVP was so perturbed by this, slap face or slap penis, whatever he's called, used the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll up, and he eliminated MVP. And then Mia Yim was like, I was only kidding, so the referee sent her away. I was like a dog chasing my tail. I just couldn't stop because I couldn't figure out what was going on. I also can't remember where the hell we were with the board because amazingly WWE hadn't done one in a month, but we'll just say, I don't know, 85. Bobby Lashley then got rid of Slapface with the spear before Bob and T-Bar or T-Rack, whatever his name is, fought so long on the outside, they did get counted out, and then Shelton Benjamin hit the pay dirt on Mace, and he was done as well, so it left Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander taking on Ali. Ruh-roh. Don't worry though, because Mustafa Ali got a chair and he just smacked Cedric Alexander with it, so he got himself a DQ. Although this is actually something to be excited about because it means we got the WWE finished triple header. You got the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, you got the double count out, and you got the disqualification. There you go. No, wait, no, that's not something to say. It's flipping terrible. Ali then ran away, and I tell you, I am more scared of my own shadow than I am Retribution. And it's nobody's fault in the group. They are doing their best, but they are just booked so poorly. As I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the only person that has to worry is the electrician, because they turn the lights on and off, and he's like, great, now I gotta go fix it again. Unbelievable. Angel Garza was then back on Raw, and it was lovely to see him. And he was trying to offer Mandy Rose a rose, and that's going to get confusing very quickly, but she turned it down because her and Otis are, and I quote, still close. I mean, what do you mean, still close? Why aren't you together? Why are you boyfriend? You're only separated by different episodes of a program. This broke my heart. Angel then tried to offer the flower to Dana Brooke instead, but when she was unsure, he just said, hey, you can both have one when Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler arrived. And they were all like, hey, let's talk about the Survivor Series team. And then Nia Jax took the rose. I'm not gonna lie, the look on her face, that's kind of funny. Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose then told them to shove it as they walked off, as Shayna Baszler looked at her friend, enemy, foe, whatever, and went, man, you such a fool. Now, there is more in this pairing when you do stuff like this, but I still don't know whether it's good or bad. Drew McIntyre then killed The Miz, and also by proxy John Morrison, who was on the outside. You know what? Up. No idea why you'd give someone the briefcase and then have them absolutely murdered, although I do, because that's just what WWE does. But the most important thing here was ensuring that Drew McIntyre came out of the pay-per-view, and when he lost the title with all the momentum in the world, and boy, how did he have momentum here, he ran through them like they were nothing. It means that he will still be treated like a main eventer even when he's not in the main event, and he deserves that. He had a phenomenal title run. He won after the Claymore kick, and then told us and kind of showed us that Matthew McConaughey, he, the Hollywood actor, was watching on one of the Thunderdome screens. And I was like, well, that's great, but it kind of just looks like a blurry mess. You could have asked anybody to put on a blonde wig and gone, oh, it's Matthew McConaughey, and I wouldn't have known any different. We also had a small build to the New Day versus the Street Profits, which of course is also going to happen at Survivor Series because they're both the tag team champions, and Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods were pretending to be the Street Profits, and it was actually quite funny, especially when Kofi Kingston took it too far and Xavier Woods told him off. Asuka then turned up so we could also promote her versus Sasha Banks, which is going to go down at the pay-per-view. They also mentioned it's going to be Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre, when the Hurt Business also came here and said, hey, it's going to be Bobby Lashley versus Sami Zayn. Asuka then laughed at them because she thinks they're a bunch of pillocks, and her, the New Day, all did the New Day chant. This was quite fun. We cut back to McIntyre, who was still mad and said he is going to do whatever he has to do to win back the WWE title, and maybe he'll turn up on A Moment of Bliss later. Those two things didn't really work. It's like, oh, I'm going to do something crazy. And then his first act of business was to go on a very easily accessible talk show. We then had all the payoff to this Raw Women's Survivor Series nonsense. And why is it so convoluted and complicated? Down. Adam Pearce and Pat Buck were in the ring, so if you're a new viewer, straight away you're gonna be like, well, who are these people and why do they have all the power? And they just said, at Survivor Series, the women's team is gonna be Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, Dana Brooke, and Mandy Rose. I mean, why is it different? Who cares? It didn't stop there though, because they had decided not to give it to a fifth competitor, and that one would be decided in a match. I mean, it is exhausting. So it was Lana versus Lacey Evans versus Peyton Royce versus Nikki Cross, who was just back. No one mentioned where she'd been. No one mentioned why she no longer cares about her best mate who's now like some trance zombie. She's just here and you don't know why. But it doesn't matter, so just forget about it. And quite incredibly, Lana won here as well, because Peyton Royce basically hit Lacey Evans and Nikki Cross with a German suplex off the top rope. And Lana's new finishing move is she waits for someone to be down, she slips in the ring and she steals the pin, and she did that here too by pinning Nikki Cross. And yes, then Nia Jax, of course, did put the former Ravishing Russian through a table. Now, last week we'd gone too far, but now because WWE went further with it, somehow it's gone full circle once again, and it's become amusing. We could do this until the world blows up, and some weeks it is going to be funny, and other weeks it's not. I don't really get the point of any of this. Still, this really did feel like you were trying to make a cake in a pot, but you had no idea what the ingredients were meant to be, so you just grabbed sugar, a fish, and some oil, and you threw it in. And as we know, nobody has ever successfully made a cake in a pot. Another backstage promo with Orton, which we didn't really need, where he said he's not scared about the Fiend at all, and then looked around like he was terrified. And Mustafa Ali told us that we will lose, or they will win, because of our suffering. And if it means the suffering from the terrible booking of Retribution, then yes, Ali, I agree with you. Right, okay, sometimes you just gotta accept what's going on in life. There's no point fighting it, you just embrace it like a Care Bear, and we move forward. So, yeah, Sheamus versus Matt Riddle is getting it up. And I know Matt Riddle lost, but here's the thing. That's just what WWE wants to do with him. No matter what I think about him, or what you think about him, or what anybody thinks about him, WWE clearly don't think he's a top guy right now. Also, I really like Sheamus. I think he's underrated. So when he bro-kicked Matt Riddle right in the face and got the 1-2-3 to go on to the Raw Survivor Series team, I said, that's it. I am joining the Sheamus Steam Service Wagon, whatever the hell that was, and I'm gonna ride it all the way to Sheamus Town. Sounds like a really good place. There was also a great moment throughout all this when the Irishman went to hit a first bro kick, missed, and got German suplexed instead for a really close near fall. So yeah, just take it for what it is. Matt Riddle, Sheamus, yes. It makes life so much easier. It was then finally time for A Moment of Bliss, which was in the main event slot. What a world we're living in. Alexa acted like a child throughout all of this, which I thought worked really well, especially because the juxtaposition was Randy Orton. He couldn't give a crap. He didn't want to sit down, he didn't want to talk about anything. All he wanted to do was focus on the Fiend, and the big question, well, where the hell is Alexa? Because I know how he works. He's going to pop up and go, rah, rah, and he's going to try and attack me. Angry Drew McIntyre then interrupted and absolutely started to beat down Randy Orton as Alexa Bliss watched this from the top rope and just laughed and smiled. And it was a lot like Harley Quinn. I don't know if that was the idea, but if you want to borrow traits from that character, you should. It works every time. McIntyre was in charge when the lights went out, and Randy Orton used that to start backing down the ramp way. But when he turned around, who was behind him? Of course, it was the Fiend. So then he was kind of trapped between a rock and a hard place, because he was like, well, I don't want to go that way, because there's Bray Wyatt. I don't want to go that way, because there's Angry Drew McIntyre. So he kind of just shuffled for a little bit. Very oddly, Bray Wyatt then disappeared and the lights came back on. Maybe he was hungry. And just to finish all this off, because Raw was about to go off the air, Drew McIntyre tried to stab Randy Orton with a pin. You have no idea how much I laughed. Earlier, Drew had been like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. And his big idea was, well, I'm gonna jump that chat show thing and then I'm gonna get a pen I'm gonna stab him in his eye. So it was yet another episode of Raw that kind of just ended in the middle of a big brawl, but it did do a lot for Drew McIntyre, and I do like the confusion here, and I say confusion in a positive way. Because now when you look at the WWE Championship, Randy Orton obviously holds the belt, but you can do something with Bray Wyatt, and you can do something with Drew. You should always cross the streams in this way. The Ghostbusters were wrong in this sense. It works, and it gives you plenty of options. In terms of Raw overall though, I have no idea what to give it, because it just gets more random every single darn week. But really, because I've said that, you can't then give it an up, because you look like a fool, so it's going to have to get a down. But I do need to caveat that by saying, I do have a great time watching it. It's as if somebody just writes a bunch of stuff down on pieces of paper, puts it through Google Translate, and then whatever it says on the other end, well, that's what we do. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of Raw. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles, follow WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCulture WWE, and not only watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling, but go to that WhatCulture community feed and vote for the retro ups and downs. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you for joining me as always. We now break from ups and downs, but I'll see you soon when we do some more on Wednesday.